The modern internship was never designed as a bridge. It was designed as a filter. It presents itself as opportunity, a foot in the door, a chance to learn, a stepping stone to something real. But beneath this language of growth lies a quieter truth. Most interns are not being trained for success. They are being sorted. Every year, in the United States, millions of students and recent graduates compete for internships in industries praised for prestige: finance, law, media, fashion, tech, politics. They accept long hours, unstable schedules, unpaid or underpaid labor, and relentless performance pressure, all for one thing: the promise that this temporary sacrifice might lead somewhere permanent. But the numbers tell a different story. Across major competitive industries, fewer than 20% of interns convert into stable, long-term positions. In some fields, the rate drops below 10%. At elite firms, the acceptance rate from internship to full-time employment can rival Ivy League admissions. And yet, each year, waves of new applicants continue to flood the system, not because the system works, but because hope obscures how it functions. The problem is not ambition. The problem is architecture. Internship systems operate like inverted pyramids. The base is wide, thousands of eager candidates willing to prove themselves. The top narrows quickly, a handful of permanent roles, carefully rationed to maintain exclusivity and control. The imbalance is intentional. Scarcity is not a flaw, scarcity is the product. And scarcity changes behavior. When a young intern arrives on their first day eager, polite, overly prepared, they are not entering a learning environment. They are entering a tournament. One where performance is rarely judged by what they create, but by how invisible they remain while absorbing more responsibility. Interns don't fail because they lack dedication. They fail because the structure doesn't require all of them to succeed. It requires most to disappear. And yet, the language surrounding internships tells a gentler story. HR departments call it skill development. Career advisors frame it as experience acquisition. Universities promote it as real-world exposure. But what it really is a system that finds its power in uncertainty. Uncertainty forces compliance. Compliance fuels productivity. Productivity fuels profit. In many corporate ecosystems, interns perform work that would otherwise require full-time salaries. They handle research, preparation, documentation, coordination, even client communication. The difference is not responsibility, it is recognition, and more importantly, compensation. This is not accidental, it is efficient. Why pay one trained professional when you can create a rotating door of highly motivated hopefuls willing to work for a fraction of the cost, just to stay in the room? What sustains this machine is not money. It is narrative. The story that effort equals progress. The story that loyalty ensures reward. The story that talent always rises. But statistics don't tell stories. They whisper realities. And reality says this: most interns are not being prepared for promotion. They are being prepared for replacement. Each intake cycle introduces fresh motivation, fresh patience, fresh obedience, and in doing so, it slowly exhausts the previous wave. Those who are not chosen don't exit with anger. They exit with silence and self-blame. They believe they weren't good enough. They believe they didn't try hard enough. They never question the ladder itself, because ladders, when viewed from below, always look climbable. And that illusion is the most valuable asset the system owns. It convinces millions that if they simply endure long enough, sleep less, ask for less, accept more, shrink more, they too might reach the top. But the top was never designed to hold them all. It was designed to remind them how far it is. The most dangerous element of the internship system is not the workload. It is the psychological contract. Interns are rarely promised success outright. Instead, they are offered something more powerful: proximity. They sit closer to decision makers. They attend meetings they don't speak in. They absorb the language of influence. They are allowed to feel adjacent to power, close enough to taste it, but not enough to access it. And that feeling of closeness creates attachment. Attachment transforms labor into devotion. Once emotionally invested, interns stop calculating what they're giving and start focusing on what they might receive. They answer emails at midnight. They cancel weekends. They volunteer for tasks no one wants. Not because they are asked to, but because they are scared of being forgettable. In these environments, visibility is a paradox. Be too assertive, and you become difficult. Be too quiet, and you fade into irrelevance. So, interns learn a strange choreography. Be indispensable, but not demanding. Be proactive, but not entitled. Be grateful at all times. This isn't professional development. This is behavioral conditioning. The system teaches young people to normalize overwork before they even receive a real salary. It teaches them that exhaustion is merit, that burnout is proof of hunger, that boundaries indicate weakness. And when only a small percentage advance, those who don't are left with a quiet, corrosive question. If I worked so hard and still wasn't chosen, what does that say about me? This is where the true efficiency of the internship trap reveals itself. The system does not have to break people. People break themselves, trying to become worthy of an outcome that was statistically out of reach from the beginning. The selection process rarely evaluates pure ability. It evaluates alignment, timing, personality, compatibility, internal politics, and most critically, how well someone fits the culture of obedience. Promotion is not about the best performer. It is about the least disruptive candidate who still performs. This is why many of the most talented interns quietly vanish, while others who learned how to mirror authority rise comfortably through the ranks. It is not a meritocracy. It is a compatibility test. And in this compatibility test, the criteria change constantly, but the narrative remains fixed. If you are good enough, you will be chosen, which is a comforting lie because it implies fairness. But fairness would require opportunity to expand with talent. This system does the opposite. It narrows. And that narrowing produces a very specific psychological outcome: scarcity anxiety. Scarcity anxiety makes interns compete with one another instead of questioning the structure itself. They compare performance, hours, proximity, praise. They monitor who gets recognition, who gets feedback, who gets invited into rooms that signal importance. This constant vigilance keeps them inside the game. And the game is profitable because while they fight for position, the system extracts output at peak efficiency. No benefits, no long-term commitment, minimal cost, and still, gratitude flows upward. Because the most powerful leverage a system can hold over a young aspirant is the idea that a different life waits on the other side of obedience. A life where they will finally be secure, respected, stable. A life that feels earned. But the cruel reality is this: many interns do not fail. They simply reach the invisible ceiling, a ceiling placed directly under where comfort begins. And those who go beyond it are held up as proof that the system works. See, the structure says, someone made it, but what it does not say is how many had to disappear for that success to remain rare enough to matter. What makes the internship trap so effective is not cruelty. It is plausibility. If the system looked obviously predatory, people would resist it. If failure felt guaranteed, people would refuse to enter. But the structure survives because it feels almost fair, almost attainable, almost reasonable, almost worth the sacrifice. This almost is where hope lives. Every year, companies publish stories of former interns who became executives, partners, creative directors, or founders. These stories are framed as inspiration, but they serve a secondary purpose. They legitimize the funnel. They transform statistical anomaly into motivational evidence. Not for truth, for continuity. Because when people believe that success is simply a matter of endurance, they tolerate conditions they would otherwise reject. They trade present stability for imagined future security. They postpone life until they feel they have earned the right to live it. And the longer they stay inside the structure, the harder it becomes to leave. This is where the internship trap mutates into something deeper: identity integration. The intern role no longer feels temporary. It becomes part of who they are. Their worth becomes attached to evaluation cycles, feedback notes, and vague promises of potential. At that point, the system no longer needs to apply pressure. The individual applies it themselves. They work harder. They demand less. They adjust their personality to fit unspoken expectations. They learn to swallow disappointment and reframe rejection as growth. But growth toward what? Not all paths lead upward. Some only lead deeper in. By the time most interns recognize the reality that the ladder narrows far too quickly, that opportunity is rationed, that conversion rates are brutally low, they are already emotionally invested. Leaving feels like personal failure, not structural inevitability. So they stay longer. They try harder. They shrink more. And still, the system does not owe them advancement, because this is not a bridge. It is a sorting mechanism. Its true function is to identify a very small handful willing to sacrifice the most while tolerating the highest levels of uncertainty. Everyone else becomes collateral experience, consumed, trained, released, replaced. And the most unsettling part is this: many who actually reach the top later reproduce the same structure, not because they enjoy cruelty, but because it is the only model they have ever known. They tell themselves the same story they were once told. It was hard for me too. That's just how it is. Thus, the cycle renews itself, not through force, through normalization. So, when we ask why 80% will never reach the top, the answer is not hidden in personal ability, discipline, or intelligence. It is hidden in the design of the system that requires most people to fail in order to make the positions above seem valuable. Scarcity must exist for status to function, and status must exist for the hierarchy to survive. This is why interns are praised for passion but punished for boundaries. Why initiative is celebrated but only when it does not challenge authority. Why loyalty is glorified but security remains conditional. The trap is not that people believe too much. The trap is that they believe in the wrong direction. They believe the ladder is proof of fairness. They believe exhaustion is evidence of worth. They believe proximity guarantees progress. But here is the truth that rarely appears in career brochures. In most institutions, advancement is not about becoming better. It is about becoming strategically tolerable, and tolerability is not freedom. So, if there is one lesson in this system, it is not to abandon ambition. It is to understand where ambition is being harvested, to recognize when hard work is being converted into leverage only for someone else. Because once you see the trap, something changes. You stop measuring yourself by a scale you did not design. You stop mistaking scarcity for significance. You stop assuming silence means inadequacy. And slowly, painfully, deliberately, you begin to choose differently. Not every system can be escaped, but no system can control you. Once you understand how it operates, and that understanding, not promotion, not prestige, not approval, is the first real form of power.